What is up, everybody? Welcome in to the Stanley Cup Final Preview Breakaway Bandits podcast, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood here on the Sports Insanity Network. I am Mike Rifkin. Hope everybody is doing well. We are live. We are about probably a little bit more than 2 hours away from puck drop between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes in game one of what should be a fantastic Stanley Cup final. We got that. We're going to go over some other news that we got today, go into detail on the conference title losers they should look at doing this summer. But we got to start with the Cup final because we got game one tonight in Raleigh just after 8 on ABC. This is going to be a fun series. And the way this series, the way these two teams got here is very similar. And I know there's someone out there who's going to comment being like, well, Vegas went to 6 games twice and Carolina swept through until the conference round where they beat Montreal in 5. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how they got here. Not in the sense of games played, but in the sense of how they're doing. It hasn't just been the superstars. Like, let's be honest here. For Carolina, they're going to need Sebastian Aho and Andrei Svechnikov to be great in this series. They are. They're going to need them to be great. Vegas, they're going to need Jack Eichel to be better than what he's been, and he's been pretty damn good. Mitch Marner's been awesome, but it's been contributions from guys like Brett Howden. You know, Hurdle got on the board in the last series, but he hadn't been playing great. But they get William Karlsson back, and things just flow. Both goalies, Freddie Anderson and Carter Hart, have been sensational in the playoffs. This series is going to come down to which star player or stars plural can come out and of their shell and have the biggest impact. Role players have done their job. And I think one of the more interesting things coming into game one tonight is how Rod Brind'Amour is going to deploy his top 2 lines. And when I say his top 2 lines, I'm not talking as opposed to scoring, defending, home ice. How is he going to use this advantage? Is he going to have Jordan Staal out there against the Eichel line? Is he going to go Eichel versus Aho? And then what are you going to do against William Karlsson and those guys? Or Hurdle? You know, how are you going to match that up? So I'm very intrigued by how Rod Brind'Amour is going to utilize home ice tonight. Maybe I would go with Staal, Jordan Staal against Jack Eichel, and then maybe play Jacob Slavin against the Karlsson line. I think that's how I would go about it. And if it doesn't work, hey, you could switch to Aho against Eichel because you still have that home ice advantage. You get last change. And I'm interested to see how John Tortorella would counteract that when they go to Vegas for games 3 and 4. You got two teams who swarm. I mean, Carolina put on a clinic against Montreal. That was a clinical, outside of game one, that was a clinical ass kicking. And that's no disrespect to Montreal because they played their butts off the whole playoffs. But Carolina was just too much. I'm really interested to see how they match up with each other. I think obviously special teams are going to be a factor. They always are. Both goalies have played phenomenally. This is going to be an intense series. You got 2 great coaches. Rod Brind'Amour's done a phenomenal job. John Tortorella, has done his thing. Listen, and let's be honest. Let me be honest here. I'm stunned Vegas swept through Colorado the way they did. That they just went right through Colorado like Colorado was nothing. So this is going to be an interesting storyline coming in. Both teams have had some time off before game one. See if the rust factor is a real deal here. But this should be a fun series. You got a lot of star power. You got a lot of big players in this series. A lot of under the radar guys have had great playoffs. And then let's be honest, like we're looking ahead, Conn Smythe. You got Marner and Carter Hart and Eichel in Vegas and Carolina. You're looking at Freddie Anderson, Logan. The line of Stankov and Blake and Taylor Hall's been phenomenal. That's why Carolina's here. That line has produced so much offense that Aho and Svechnikov haven't had to carry the play. This is going to be an intense series. And I really I would not be stunned if this went 7. I think Vegas is a little bit deeper. I'm gonna take Vegas in 6. That's been kind of where my gut and head have leaned. I like Vegas in 6, but this should be an outstanding series. And I can't wait. There's no downside in this series. There really isn't, unless it ends early, because then we got about 3+ weeks, almost 4 weeks till the draft, and then free agency, and then it's off for a couple of months. So, but yeah, I like Vegas at 6. I think this is gonna be a phenomenal series. All right, so I want to talk about the two teams who got knocked out in the conference final. Montreal got knocked out by Carolina at 5. The Avs got swept by the Golden Knights. So I'm going to start Colorado with my paper. They have a little bit more than $2 million in cap space, so they don't have a ton of cap space, which means they're going to have to make some roster moves here. The names you're hearing are Ross Colton, Arturi Lehkonen. Colton is going to be an interesting guy because I think he fits what a lot of teams want to do. He can play in that kind of third line center wing role. He could be a really important player for a team. I kind of wonder about him with a couple of places. I don't think he's a top 6 guy. I think he's more of a top 9 guy. Penalty kill, maybe give him some second power play time. I wonder about a place like San Jose. Did they use another middle grouping forward who could block some shots, help them on the PK, maybe help them on some draws? Ross Colton's going to be an interesting guy because let's be honest, Colorado's whole offseason is re-sign Kemper. They're going to do it. We don't know how much he's going to make. He's going to make a lot, but he'll make something. But that's going to be the Avs offseason. They have one major RFA, Jack Drury, who had a pretty nice playoffs. I mean, that goal he scored in Game 3 against Vegas. It's pretty sweet. Brent Burns is a UFA. He's not going to – if you bring him back, he's not going to sign for a lot of money. Kulak's a UFA too. So they're going to have to work around this blue line here a little bit. They don't have a ton of draft capital. So you're basically going to go into next year with the same team. Now, there is going to be one negative. Chris McFarland is out as the GM. He took the GM and president of hockey operations job with the Preds today, so congrats to him. Joe Sakic is going to take back over being the general manager. So everyone in hockey look out. But look, the Avs failed this year, not because they won the President's Trophy. Everyone's going to talk about the curse. The simplicity is this: the Avs depth guys didn't do it, and some of their big guys didn't do it. Marty Necas was a 100-point guy. He was invisible most of his playoffs. Brock Nelson was a 30-goal guy. He really didn't have an impact in the Western Conference Finals. He had no impact. Makar misses Game 1 and Game 2. Obviously he was banged up. But Colorado's they're going to have to find a way, get creative. I think the other thing I would be interested in, if I'm Colorado, you're going to get a full year back with Nazem Kadri. So I'm going to be interested to see how they deploy Kadri and Nelson next year. Jared Bednar is staying, which I think is the right call because I don't think he deserved to be canned, to be honest with you. So I kind of like where the Avs are. They're going to be in the thick of it again next year. But I think next year's a do or die point for some parts of that team. A lot of those older players, Kadri, Nelson, are going to have to figure something out. They don't have a ton of draft capital. They don't have a ton of picks. So they may want to do something major this summer. Maybe take a chunk of a guy who could help refurbish them a little bit. Maybe that is Natchez. I'm not saying that's what I would do. Maybe they get creative with something else. I don't know. But I think this is an important summer for Joe Sakic. Flip side to Montreal, they don't have the same worries. They've got 10 million plus in cap space. Their biggest UFA is going to be Patrick Laine, and he's not coming back. Kirby Dach and Zach Bolduc are both RFAs. Bolduc, I think, is more important than Dach. I thought Bolduc was impressive in the playoffs. Physically, he added some goal scoring, gave them some depth scoring, was a pain in the neck for certain teams to play against. I liked his game in that top 9 role. Brendan Gallagher basically said he's probably out too. Whether that's a trade or whatever Montreal's going to do. And I'm sure they'll do right by him. And the other thing is this. Look, I think Sam Montembeau's probably out too. Dobish, I thought, was awesome most of the playoffs. I thought they hung him out to dry a little bit in this Carolina series. But I just thought that was Carolina. But if you look at the nucleus of the Montreal Canadiens, it's really good. Suzuki, Caulfield, Demidov, Slavkovsky, Lane Hudson, I believe, was top 5 in Norris voting this year. And he's going to win one in the next 3 or 4 years. He's that good, that talented. They do have a massive need, though. And that need is a second line center. That was Jake Evans in the playoffs. And no, not a knock on Jake Evans. He scored some goals. He's a defensive minded center. That's not a top 2 center, in my opinion. You know what you get out of a Philip Deneau, but I think he's more, third, fourth line at this point in his career, center wise. So they need a number 2 center, and they have assets that if they want to make a trade, they can trade. Who do they go get? I don't know. Maybe they're going to monitor the Nico Hischier thing in Jersey. Maybe they monitor Vinny Trocheck with the Rangers. I'll give you an interesting one. He hasn't proven anything. He hasn't proven much, but he's a young guy who would fit, and he's not going to cost Gorton and Hughes a lot. I wonder about a guy like Shane Wright. And I'm not saying you give him the number 2 center right away. You have him compete with Evans, with Deneau. And if he can't make it, then there's an issue. But that would be, I don't know what that costs you. I don't think it costs you a lot. That would be something I would look at from Montreal. But, if they want to swing bigger, they have the right. They can do whatever they want. They are growing as a team. They went first round last year. They get to the conference finals this year. Next year's another step for them. But the Atlantic Division next year, I'm going to get into a little bit of a soapbox here. If you look at the Atlantic Division next year, and this is more for things I've listened to, because I hear people talk about the Leafs all the time. Oh, Leafs can get right back into contention if they do a couple of things. And I look at the Atlantic Division and I go, okay, well, let's look at the Atlantic. Montreal's coming off the conference finals. They're good, young, and they're fast. Buffalo just ended the 14-year drought. They're young, they're fast. They're going to do something big this summer. They are. Tampa Bay still exists. They're going to get Victor Hedman back. And I got a crazy feeling they're going to do something really smart. Boston is still around. They have money. They could do something. And by the way, they're bringing in more young players. James Higgins has got some looks this year. He's going to get a full year next year. Fraser Minton was awesome for them this year. So that's Ottawa. I've talked about how much I loved Ottawa's nucleus for so long. They're going to be really good. Oh, they should be good. So I just named Boston, Tampa, Buffalo, Ottawa. Wait. The Florida Panthers are going to be healthy. Again, we don't know the Bobrovsky stuff yet, but they're going to be healthy. They're going to get Barkov back. He just played the World Championships. They're not going to be as injured. They're going to be hungry. They're back. Detroit. I don't think there's a team next year with more pressure on them than the Detroit Red Wings because of the whole Iser plan. If you just think you're going to coast to a playoff spot, the Atlantic Division next year is getting 5 teams, most likely. And if you're locked into a Metro spot, you're fighting for a top 3 seed. So we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, Montreal needs a second line center. Colorado might have to get a little bit more creative with what they want to do. One last thing, because I'm going to make this a quick pod. I want to talk Vancouver Canucks for a minute. So they hired Ryan Johnson to be the new general manager. They've now hired Manny Malhotra to be the new coach. Maybe they take his son, number 3 overall in the draft coming up. Who knows? Vancouver needs a full reset here. And this summer has to be a full reset. And so I've written out some of their contracts. If you read the bottom. Yeah, my handwriting's not great. But anyway, Elias Pettersson makes 11.6 till 2032 as a full no move. You have to move him. I know you're trading pennies on the dollar on Elias Pettersson. It hasn't worked. Change of scenery is needed. I know Jimmy Rutherford didn't want to retain. Well, guess what? Jimmy Rutherford's no longer there. You're probably going to have to retain something. So Pettersson's got to go. Brock Besser's at 7.25 till 2032. Also, full no move. I think you have to explore the Brock Besser market. Personally, I didn't know why you brought it back, but we all now know why. It was to appease Quinn Hughes. That didn't work, so they moved off of Quinn Hughes, which, by the way, was a great trade for them. They got the equivalent of 4 first-round picks, where you're talking about Bume. I believe they have Vancouver's. I think Vancouver got Minnesota's first-round pick. They got Marco Rossi, and they got one other piece that I'm just not remembering. Jake DeBrusk makes 5.5 through 2031. We've heard the rumor, he's probably gone. And then Phil Hronek makes 7.25 till 2032, also full no trade. I think you got to explore it. I think this thing needs to be stripped down all the way. And I think if you're a Canuck fan, knowing now you have a new GM and a new coach who are more than likely on the same page, I think you'd be okay with stripping this thing down, because I don't know how long it would be. You play in the Pacific Division, so it's not like 130 points. You're going to need 125 points next year or something. Calgary's going through a rebuild too. Anaheim just got ended one. San Jose's going to be really good. The Kings are in need of one, in my opinion. So you can rebuild right now. Vegas is Vegas. The Oilers are going to have a ton of pressure too next year. So you're going to have to go through this a little bit if you're Vancouver. But the key to the whole thing has been the health of Thatcher Demko. And he makes 8.5 till 2030. Also full no move. And no one's strained for Thatcher Demko just based on the injury history. But when he plays, he's one of the best goalies in the league. He just doesn't play enough. But maybe if Thatcher Demko has a really good year, then you could consider moving off of him as you continue this rebuild. But it's got to be full rebuild in Vancouver. The Avs may have to get creative on something. Montreal needs a number 2 center. And I like Vegas in 6. I think Vegas wins the cup, their second cup, their third time already in the cup final in 9 years, which is insane. Carolina also looking for their second cup. They won back in 06 when Rob Brentmore was the captain. So there's a lot there. This series is going to be epic. I'll give you a game 1 prediction since I'm recording on the day of game 1. I like Vegas tonight. I like Vegas 3-2 overtime. Mitch Marner gets the game-winning goal. I just got a feeling about Vegas, man. And if Carolina wins, more power to them, but it should be a phenomenal series. Sorry, this has been a bit of an abbreviated episode of the Breakaway Bandits podcast, sponsored by the Dugout Millwood here on the Sports Insanity Network. Go to the website, thesportsinsanitynetwork.com, for great blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. Follow the socials. Facebook, the Sports Insanity Network, Twitter, Insanity Real. You can follow me personally, Twitter, Punmaster Rifkin, same name on Blue Sky. Everyone enjoy the Stanley Cup final. When it's over, I will do a full recap of the final and preview the off season with some major questions. Also, we'll probably go over the awards, which have started being handed out. Shout out Zach Werenski for winning the Norris Trophy, well deserved, and the voters got it right. I will give them that. All right, take it easy, everybody.